Childhood is probably the most important time in a person's life. All the things around you, like your friends, your family, what you watch on TV, that tends to shape who you are later in life and affect what kind of person you'll become. Therefore, it's better to surround yourself with things that have a good impact on you. That is, if you want to become a functional member of society. Everyone seems to know and accept this fact, but dang it, children's television makes that so hard. There's a couple intelligent ones out there, but they're not a dime a dozen, trust me. More often than not, all it'll be is bright, colorful, loud, shrieky drivel. These don't really have any sort of concrete structure to them. They don't have any real benefits that a kid can get. Sad to say, kids are easily entertained most of the time, and network executives like to bank on that. They love nothing more than to churn out cheap, easy, all the same generic, mindless kid shows. And if it's not bad enough for the kids watching them, think about the parents. The parents are gonna have to sit down and watch Peppa Pig, Hello Dougie, or whatever's on, and just suffer through it. My aunt has a ton of little kids, and she always says that whenever she's watching some of the shows they like, it's nothing but slow, obnoxious torture. Oh, if only there was a children's show out there that actually knew what it was doing. Well, there are a couple out there. I've already mentioned Word Girl and how that one actually treats its audience like they have brains, but what if I told you that wasn't even the best example I could think of? There's one out there that's actually so good, I actually sometimes go in my free time to watch some of the episodes. What is it? Well, it's the legendary LazyTown. We all know what this is, I bet. After We Are Number One became a huge meme in 2016 and 17, we all know what LazyTown is. But the thing is, it's more than just a meme. This is actually one of the best children's shows I have ever seen in my entire life. I am hard-pressed to find anything wrong with it. All of the pitfalls, all of the potential disasters it could have being a children's show, it steps right over them. Or rather, leaps and flips right over them. LazyTown started off as an Icelandic stage play, created and starring Magnus Scheving. His desire was to promote a healthy lifestyle and not treat kids like idiots. Already I like this guy. He created a sequel in 1999 introducing the man, the myth, the legend, Stefan Karl Stefansson as Robbie Rotten. But this wasn't enough for Magnus, no. He wanted to take LazyTown further. He knew that it was already doing its job well in Iceland. But what if he could make the positive effects that he was giving to the kids of Iceland to the rest of the world? So he made a pilot, shopped it around, Nickelodeon bought it, and here we are. LazyTown. Running for about 10 years with 4 seasons and a crazy off and on production cycle, this show has entertained and taught kids far better than a lot of the others, especially on Nick Jr. But what exactly made LazyTown stand out above all the others? Well, let me tell you. First off, it's a simple premise that kids can get attached to. The theme song says it all. LazyTown is a crazy, colorful little town filled with puppet people, and also Robbie Rotten. A girl named Stephanie has come to LazyTown to go see her uncle, the mayor, only to find out that LazyTown is, well, lazy. No one wants to do anything. They're always stuck inside watching TV, eating junk food, and wasting their childhoods away. But with the help of a big blue superhero who loves nothing more than sports and acrobatics, still played by Magnus by the way, they can bring sports back to LazyTown and defeat the evil schemes of Robbie Rotten, who's trying to make sure that LazyTown stays lazy. Nothing overly complicated so that kids are gonna get lost, but at the same time, not so mindless and simple that it feels like pandering. Take a look at, say, Peppa Pig. What's that about? Nothing. Bubble Guppies. What's that about? It's about kids going to school, but they just so happen to be merpeople. There's actually a story to this, showing that, yes, kids can actually understand plots and themes. Something that seems to be lost on a lot of folks these days in children's entertainment, but that's just how it is in the business, I guess. The lessons in LazyTown are not just one note. When you hear the premise about the superhero going to the town, trying to make sure everyone eats healthy and gets active, you'd think it'd just be 100 and some episodes of the same thing, right? Well, no. Yes, there's always a theme about eating right and doing active activities, but there's more to it than that. There will be times where characters need to learn to share, or where they need to speak up for what they believe in, or not be scared of something, or being a good friend. And oftentimes they'll combine the two lessons together so that kids can learn two things in one episode rather than just the standard one. The question is though, does it work? When you try to do two ideas at once, both of them end up getting half-baked and they don't turn out correctly. And when you do that with a lesson and it doesn't come out thorough or effective enough, you're just wasting the kids' time or gonna teach them misinformation. Luckily, LazyTown avoids all of that. Part of the reason is because the whole getting active message is built into the show. Just by existing, it enforces that message. All the characters of Stephanie and Sportacus want to do is just sports and exciting adventures. Because they're the heroes and they're bright, colorful characters with personality, which I'll get to later, the young viewers will grow attached to them and want to emulate them, thereby doing exactly what they're teaching. And because the lesson exists purely through these characters, they'll have enough time and space to talk about the other lessons they want to teach. And because the characters they love and admire are speaking these truths, they'll want to do the same things as them. When you see Stephanie speaking up for what she believes in, the children will want to do the same. This is why you want to have likable and interesting heroes, because when they're just boring pieces of paper that don't really do anything except spout catchphrases and try to sell you merchandise, kids aren't really going to attach to them. They might attach to the colors or the high-pitched noises, but what is that giving them? What is that doing for them in their life? Nothing. Here we actually have bright, colorful characters that we can actually, like, respect, relate to. Oh, so unheard of. Let's go over these people one by one. The main character is actually not Sportacus. It's Stephanie, the girl who comes to LazyTown and tries to help it not be lazy. Admittedly, she is one of the lesser interesting characters, but that's only by comparison. Because everyone else around her is so bright, colorful, animated, and whimsical, Stephanie, being kinda normal and down to earth, isn't as interesting. But again, just by comparison. On her own, she's a pretty well-rounded character. And honestly, one of the best kid characters I've seen in quite some time. Both actresses that played her in LazyTown's run really exemplify the energy of being a kid. None of her lines ever feel like some stuffy writer sitting in a back room asking himself, what would the kids say? What would they think is hip and radical? Every word out of her mouth is believable. She talks just how any other kid who likes sports would talk in this situation. She feels real and relatable in a world that is anything but. Sportacus would be the secondary main character. He's often been described as just a big kid at heart. While he is wise and understanding, what he really likes is playing. If someone bounces something, hits something, throws something, he's gonna want to be involved. He really just seeks to do good for two reasons. One, to make a positive impact on people's lives, and two, to set an example. Even though Sportacus is a superhero, he doesn't really have any superpowers. Sure, he can flip and do all these crazy somersaults, but that's what real people can do. After all, Magnus can do this in real life. Albeit, maybe not to the scale that's provided in the show, but he can still do it. And most of the time when he's called a superhero, he just says he's an above-average hero. Showing that if the kids work hard enough, they can be just like him. He never really shows animosity to anybody either. He's really the only one who never really gets too upset at Robbie Rotten. Even sometimes offering to be friends and make up at the end. Of course, Robbie always shoots him down at the end, but it's nice to know that one of our main characters is never really vindictive or evil. He only just seeks to do the right thing. Now let's get to the puppet characters. Mayor Meanswell is just a blithering, happy-go-lucky simpleton. Like Sportacus, he's a big kid at heart, but in different ways. The mayor is basically what happens when you put a 9-year-old in charge of a city. He doesn't really know what he's doing, he's bumbling, he's goofy, but he always has a good heart and never seeks to do anything bad. He's just, well, the mayor. Miss Busybody is probably the weakest of the characters, considering the fact that she doesn't get as much focus as everyone else. She's the mayor's secretary and tends to be a bit patronizing to the kids, but still pretty friendly, and definitely likes to push the mayor around a bit because he's kinda got a thing for her. Still, she's a pretty decent character whenever she is utilized, even if it isn't all too much. Stingy is exactly what his name sounds like. You got it, he wants it. Every single thing has to be his. He's unbelievably selfish. He also thinks so highly of himself that he always expects to be the center of attention. And when he's not, that tends to not go so well. Ziggy loves candy and sweets. His sweet tooth is so strong that he'll drop anything he's doing in order to get his hands on some, well, anything with sugar in it. He has dreams of being a superhero one day, which is probably why he, along with Stephanie, is the one that looks up to Sportacus the most. Of the puppet characters, he's the most naive and childlike, often getting into goofy, crazy situations. Pixel is the techno guy. Armed with an extremely high intelligence and a knack for creating new gizmos, he's always up to date on every new technological thing coming out, and he's always there to help provide his gizmos whenever they're in a pinch. Trixie is a troublemaker. According to the writers, she was the hardest one to write for because there was a lot of trouble getting her to do new things and expanding on her character. But I don't see it here. She's pretty well used. But we're forgetting somebody, aren't we? Aren't we forgetting the character that everybody knows, loves, and admires deeply? Who could that be? Oh yeah, Robbie Rotten, the main villain of LazyTown. He used to be what Sportacus is now, the guy that everybody turns to for advice and helps shape the town in the way that he wants it to be. However, now that Sportacus is around, all the kids are running and jumping and dancing and being healthy, and he can't stand it. No. No matter what, he will put a stop to it. Each time it involves Robbie concocting some zany scheme and getting into a disguise to fool the kids and teach them about bad eating and being lazy, only to have it blow up in his face and get defeated by Sportacus in the end. If you ask anyone about this show, they're gonna mention Robbie Rotten. He is a standout character. Stefan Carl plays him in such a bizarre way. Apparently he got inspiration from Jim Carrey's The Grinch, and I can really see it. Although there are some differences. For one, he's actually funny. Robbie is basically the comic relief of the show, as well as the villain, which is a nice touch. He can be both threatening and intimidating, yet also goofy and ridiculous. Never do these conflict either. They always feel like one solid character that just happens to be a bit of both. He's the right mix, especially for a kid's show. He's dark and intimidating enough to be taken seriously, but not too much so that he's scary. That's where the goofiness comes in. It's there to balance him out and make the kids actually like him. In fact, maybe a bit too much. I know a lot of kids had this, but when I was a kid watching this, Robbie was my favorite. I never strove to be like him, but he definitely was my favorite because he was the most entertaining. And that's purely on the actor. Stefan Carl was in this since the character's conception, and he is loving every second of it. Any scene he's in, he just steals it. It's just impossible not to get swept up right along with this guy. He's having the time of his life. There's also a couple small character touches that I like. For example, according to Stingy's actor, Jody Eichelberger, Stingy doesn't really use contractions. Why? Well, because if he used contractions, he wouldn't get to have as many letters, now would he? Saying the full word lets him have more, and that's what he's all about. See? Little things like that definitely help make the characters and the writing pop a bit more. Speaking of the writing, let's talk about that. Similar to Word Girl, this was written not just to pander to kids and make them giggle while the parents want to boil themselves in hot water. No, this was actually written for families and maybe even adults in mind. When writing a joke, the question wasn't, will the kids think this is hip and trendy? No. And it wasn't, will this make the kids dumber? No. It was actually, what would make me laugh? What would make me, as a parent, enjoy this show? And as a result, the humor in this show is very tight. Admittedly, when I was watching these episodes for this re-review, there were several times where I actually laughed out loud when I was all alone. And that doesn't happen all too often. And no, they weren't ironic laughs. And no, they didn't all just come from Robbie Rotten. These were legitimately good lines coming from Ziggy, Pixel, and especially Stingy. I watched quite a few, and everyone got at least 3 good zingers. Even the more serious and straight man characters like Sportacus and Stephanie get to do things that are funny. Some of the funniest bits I found that don't have Robbie Rotten in them, because that's cheating, everything he does is a laugh riot, was in the spin-off series LazyTown Extra. This was a series that would help LazyTown be more relatable with the country it was airing in. So Ziggy would ask the kids about what it's like when they eat sports candy, which is what they call fruits and vegetables, play their favorite sports games, etc., etc. These scenes were alright, I suppose, but the best parts of these were the Mayor and Stingy segments. There will be parts where Stingy comes into the mayor's house with a problem and the two just banter. Apparently a lot of this was improvised and you can really tell. These two actors are clearly having the time of their life, just hamming it up like Stefan Karl is doing. And it doesn't hurt that they're both really good at ad-libbing either.
So you're saying that by sharing with others, I can make their lives better?
Exactly!
I don't buy it.
But Stingy, how will I draw Sporticus?
You can draw a picture of Sporticus, who has magically become invisible.
Invisible?
Let me see. When may I say, you're doing an amazing job.
But that's just the humor. How is the actual writing? Well, we covered the lessons already, but the characters rarely ever have out-of-character moments. Everything is just so fine-tuned because everyone had a really good understanding of the characters. That's likely due to the small cast. Aside from the main characters, there will occasionally be a one-off character, but that's it. There was never any big new character added to the cast, or major personality changes, aside from the characters growing and maturing with time. With such a small set of characters to focus on, you tend to be able to understand them a bit more, and severely curtail the risk of doing something that wouldn't fit with their character. But here comes a hot take. The best part of LazyTown's writing isn't the humor, nor is it the lessons. It's the fact that it can actually be quiet. While there's usually music zipping around every which way, it's not always yelling and screaming and quipping and joking. A lot of the time, there can just be moments where a character sits off to the side, kind of monologues, and says it in a soft voice. It doesn't always have to be zooming and attention-grabbing. LazyTown knew how to just slow down, give the kids a breather, take its time, let the characters be the characters. This is something I've barely seen in kids shows. Even Word Girl didn't really do this. Also in these moments there will just be one-on-one conversations, usually about the lesson. It's straightforward, it's simple, it's relatable, and it feels genuine. It feels like two people actually having a conversation, even though at least one of those people is a puppet. And let's talk about the puppets, or rather the visuals. Man, get a look at this. LazyTown was an extremely expensive show to put on, and it shows. This looks great. The costuming is always really on point and very well done. The puppets are very unique to the show. In the pilot, they looked a little scary, but here, they look rather appealing. They're bright and colorful so that kids can attach onto them, but they also have enough room to show their personalities. Not hurting is the fact that the puppeteers are really good at their jobs. The puppets feel like actual people in this show. Also, puppeteering with these puppets was not all too easy. They had to roll around on the sets and lift these heavy things above their heads. That's right, they don't really look like it, but the LazyTown puppets were actually quite heavy. The mayor's puppet was reportedly about 10 pounds. Having to lift that over your head for several hours in a hot studio in Iceland, that takes some real commitment. LazyTown also uses a lot of CG, mostly for the backgrounds. They're all green screened in, but they look rather nice. They're very well integrated, so it doesn't feel like it's a bunch of actors standing in front of a green wall. It feels like they're actually in LazyTown. Rarely, if ever, did I ever see this as anything like a set. It felt like a real place. Of course, the technology was very difficult to use, especially in the first season, but I'd say it was worth it. It helped make this strange foreign land seem real. Good going, special effects crew. Now, how's about the music and songs? The music was mostly composed by Mani. Though the songs can all take on different styles, they have one thing in common. They're all unbelievably catchy. There's We Are Number One, of course, but we all know about that one. But let me list some of my favorites. There's Galaxy, No One's Lazy in LazyTown, Master of Disguise, and my absolute favorite, You Are a Pirate. By the way, if you like the English version of You Are a Pirate, then take a look at the Icelandic version, where Stefan Karl actually dubs over his own voice using his native Icelandic language.
halten man med Rødblom og regnen. Her, tippeti-do, vi krøver med en, ja, vi krøver med tårn. Faunen for svarten og drauget av horn. Rødblom og regnen.
Not bad, huh? They're fun, they're exciting, and unbelievably catchy. It's clear that great care was taken to make sure that these songs could be the very best that they could possibly be. As with songs in kids' shows, not all of them are going to be absolutely fantastic, but there's never any that are just bad or boring. The worst they can get is about a 6 out of 10, which isn't too bad, but when they're good, they're really good. Meme-worthy even. But there's more to the music than what the characters sing. It's also the background music. Whenever somebody moves or has a big character moment, signature styles of music will play. Like when Sportacus is doing his crazy poses, or when Robbie's sneaking around. According to Monty, this was a mixture between big-budget cinema score and Tom and Jerry, having the grand scope of a lot of cinematic movies like Star Wars or Ben-Hur, but also the fun playfulness and constant barrage of wacky, zany motions as Tom and Jerry. And I definitely see that coming out right here. It definitely helps enhance the mood. Then again, it also serves the purpose of getting the kids' attention by having a lot of sound and noise. But it's never obnoxious or distracting. It always enriches the mood and helps the moment. In addition, it helps bring a little emphasis to the jokes, adding that little punch at the end. I couldn't imagine LazyTown without this style of music. Finally, the last reason why I can say this show was so good was because of the crew behind it. A lot of the times when I like a show, I'll look up the story behind it. How it was made, who was behind it, what was it like working on the show. Sometimes you learn some horror stories. Some horror stories are so bad that I kinda tend to look at the show a bit differently. Whenever I see the show, I can't unsee the horrors that went behind it. That's one of the reasons why Drawn Together Season 3 was so bad, because I knew the nightmare that went behind making that thing. I looked up LazyTown's story, and it's actually very interesting. I urge you to look up some of the interviews on the getlazy.net forums. They're also posted here on YouTube. They contacted half the cast and had them relay their stories and personal experiences. But let me give a little bit of a recap. This whole thing was Magnus's baby. He loved it to pieces. Yes, LazyTown was a business, but above all, it was a passion project. Nothing was gonna stop this guy from helping the world, inspiring kids, giving them a good time, and making sure that his vision gets to live on and in the way he wanted it. Making the first season was borderline agony. No real schedules, problems with the technology, you name it, it pretty much happened there. Still though, everyone grew really close together, becoming a pseudo-family in a sense, and it showed on screen. The chemistry that the characters have can only come from a sense of the actors actually caring about each other. And as the show went on, they grew closer and happier together. Once again, it really was exemplified on screen. LazyTown was off and on in production. That's part of the reason why LazyTown Extra existed. Give a little bit of filler content for when the show comes back on. But by the time the show was picked up again, Juliana Moriello, the original actress for Stephanie, was too old for the part, so they casted Chloe Lang instead. She felt a little weird at first knowing that these people had all known each other and been so close, but they took her right in. Within a week or so, it was like she was always a part of the gang. They treated her with respect, they understood that she was a kid, so they let her have some free time and some space. It was an ideal place for her to be. To show just how caring the cast was about each other, do you know who started the GoFundMe page to help Stefan Karl's cancer treatment? It was Mark Valenti, the head writer of LazyTown. It wasn't some fan or family member, it was someone that Stefan Karl had worked with for so long. These people had always stayed in touch and always been really close. And when LazyTown started becoming a meme, they didn't do what Derek Savage or whoever created Stravinsky in the Mysterious House and decided to turn on the meme, effectively killing it prematurely. No. And they didn't do what the Nutshack creators did, where they kind of ignored it at first, then tried to capitalize on it, then turned on it. No. What they did was they embraced it like no one else has embraced a meme before. They saw LazyTown was getting popular again, even if it was with meme culture. So you know what they did? They fueled the fire. They posted more episodes to their YouTube channel. They talked about the memes. They released some of the source files for the songs to help make the memes easier to make and more inventive and exciting. They were all on board. They didn't want it to ever stop. But as memes tend to do, it did come to an end. And I bet they all wish it came back. The crew, the cast, the people who owned it, they were nothing but supportive. Seems like a really great show, huh? I bet you're wondering, with what's going on with today's children's shows, should LazyTown ever come back? A lot of the fans, and yes, there are fans, and by fans I mean adult fans, not people that watch it ironically because of the memes, or people who watch it because they grew up on it. I mean people that legitimately like it 100%. This started around the time LazyTown first came on. There's a big adult fandom for this. Anyways, the fans have always said LazyTown should come back, but should it? I'd actually say, heck no. Do not bring this back. I know everybody is on board with doing it again. I know the actors have said that if they ever got the call, they would drop everything and do it, but I think this is a terrible, terrible idea. First of all, you'll have to recast Stephanie again. Chloe Lang is too old for the part. So that's bad enough. Second, Magnus isn't a part of LazyTown anymore, nor was he when the show was wrapping up. When the show was picked up again, he said that in 2016 he was gonna 100% step down from LazyTown, letting someone else take over the creative decisions, and letting someone else play the part of Sporticus. I'll concede that Stephanie can be recast, but Magnus was Sporticus. Having somebody else play him would just not feel right, especially given that Magnus was the creator of the show. You know what happens when a creator leaves a show. Just look at SpongeBob, The Loud House, Clarence, The Simpsons. It all just goes downhill. And perhaps the biggest reason why it shouldn't come back is you have to recast yet another character, because let's address the 50-ton gorilla in the room. The patron saint of charisma himself, Stefan Karl Stefansson, passed away due to cancer at the age of 43. He was way too young to go. The meme actually did help save his life a bit. With the money they got for the cancer treatment, it prolonged his life substantially. But of course, there is no cure for cancer, so his light had to go out sooner or later. And of course, it did. There is no way you could recast Robbie Rotten. And they've tried. Have you ever seen the live shows of LazyTown? They almost never get the actual actors to play them. And it shows. Just look at who plays Robbie in this clip. Do you think this guy could ever match Stefan Karl's energy or charisma, or even likability?
Then we're going to finally catch the blue kangaroos!
A kangaroo, boss?
No, not an actual kangaroo. It's a superhero in a blue costume.
A superhero in a blue kangaroo costume?
Forget about the kangaroo. Concentrate on the blue shmoo.
Huh?
Spotify! Then everything will be lazy in LazyTown forever!
Yeah, I wouldn't say he could either. One's too old, one's dead, and one is off running a fish restaurant in Reykjavik. People have just moved on. It's not the time or place for it. It got revived once already, and it was lucky enough to keep the same level of consistent quality, but doing it again, especially with all the circumstances lined up against it, would be a huge, huge gamble, and one that I don't think many of the LazyTown fans really want to take. So that's another hot take there. I really don't think we need any more of it. Besides, we got 104 episodes. I think that's enough. But through it all, LazyTown is the quintessential children's show. It doesn't treat them like idiots. It has intelligent characters, good lessons, vibrant visuals, and moreover, it's entertaining for the adults watching it with the kids. If you have children yourself, or you're watching over some and you're recommending shows for them to watch, I couldn't recommend LazyTown enough. When you're watching it, you won't feel like you're dying a slow, loud, colorful death. You'll find something that's actually rather intelligent, more so than it had any right to be. Ironically enough, when it comes to everything that was put into it and everything that it gave us, LazyTown was anything but. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. This has been the first video in the month of December, which means that it's all about, well, let's be honest, pandering. You guys wanted to see an old TV Talks get remade, and here it is. And coming up next week, we're gonna have a Christmas review. What is it? Well, you'll just have to wait and see. But what did you guys think of the video? What do you guys think of LazyTown? Do you think it could ever or should ever be brought back? Comment below and let me know, because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.